And also joining us from New York is Mark Meirowitz. He is a political analyst and a professor of constitutional law and American policy at the State University of New York Maritime College. Professor, good to have you on the program. You heard the voices there from the Democrats. They're, of course, quite upset about this. From your point of view, was this operation legal?
Well, I'm not the lawyer. Maybe I will be, right? But I am a lawyer. But here's the point: Schumer is completely wrong, this is not lawlessness. This presumably is within the law and within the holdings of the United States Supreme Court, which I will explain in a moment. I think that the issue here is whether or not taking Maduro from Venezuela, the way this was done, and bringing him to the United States under an indictment for narco-terrorism, for working with the cartel of the Suns, for involving a conspiracy to bring narcotics into the United States, and so forth, will hold muster according to the law. Can you be abducted and brought to the federal court in this way? The Supreme Court has held in a case a number of years ago. You mentioned Noriega, but there's also another case which involved a Mexican national who was involved in torturing a DEA agent to death, who was then, this Mexican national, abducted from Mexico by DEA agents to stand trial in the United States. The Supreme Court said that the fact of respondent's forcible abduction does not prohibit trial in a United States court for violations of criminal law. That is absolutely plain law. The issue, there are a lot of other issues here as a matter of law that will be presented, not tomorrow. Tomorrow there'll be an arraignment. They'll either read the indictment or waive the indictment. He'll have an attorney present, and then he'll probably be remanded. He's not going to have bail, I'm pretty sure. He'll be going on bail. And then he'll have a trial under the laws of the United States. Now, he could argue that he's a head of state, and therefore, under our law, he's immune from prosecution. But that's an interesting question, because is he really the head of state? Well, he was recognized as such by some of our presidents, but at the present time, he actually stole the presidency from others, Machado, Gonzalez, who were elected by the people. And then he can make some other legal arguments that what he did was official acts. There's all sorts of things here, because the United States is a country of laws. And notwithstanding the protesters sitting around the country, whatever they're doing, this individual, if correct in terms of what's being accused, is actually getting a fair trial with an attorney in our courts. He's
Professor,
allegedly serious crimes.
If I just may challenge your point of view here, just briefly, would the opposite be okay then? If a leader of another country thinks that Trump has broken any of their laws, could they deploy a team to capture Trump and put him on trial in their country? Would that be considered legal as well?
Who do you mean, North Korea? I mean, the question is an absurdity, because the idea here is that in the world, in the civilized world, from a moral point of view, also in a legal point of view, being a narco-terrorist is unacceptable. Okay? So I don't think it's an analogous question, analogous issue. The other point is the extradition treaty between Venezuela and the United States, whether that actually provides that the United States will not abduct or bring anybody from a country under extradition. So there's a lot of issues here, but these are going to be settled in law. There are no comparable courts in China, North Korea, or Russia, or the countries that you think might want to do something to Trump, because there is no rule of law there. You see what they're capable of. But the United States has a rule of law. And as a lawyer, I can say that we are committed to the rule of law. And if the law provides, and if the courts provide, and it may go up likely to Supreme Court of the United States, that this was an unlawful abduction, he will be returned to Venezuela. But the question is, what about Venezuela? He's not the legitimate president. He actually forced the people elected properly by these people, Machado, Gonzalez, and the others, to flee into hiding. So where is his claim on standing on a high bench that I should not be prosecuted for crimes and the indictment sets it forth. So if he has the defense and the defense prevails, he'll win the case. However, if he committed crimes, I think probably like Noriega, he will be prosecuted in this country. Now, Trump said at the press conference, he said, I gave him a chance. I talked to him. I gave him an out, but he didn't want an out. He didn't want to leave. Well, that's kind of where it is. He ran Venezuela down to the ground. He destroyed its economy. He destroyed, I'm talking about Maduro, its oil and natural gas resources, and 7 or 8 million people in Venezuela have fled. And notwithstanding the protests you talk about, there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world who are dancing in the streets that Maduro has been overturned. And this guy, Rodriguez, she's not even a legitimate ruler either, and the Supreme Court of Venezuela is not legitimate. And the government was bolstered by Cuban security agents. So you know what? It's a house of cards. It's fallen down, and hopefully Venezuela can reconstitute itself as a stable democracy with elected leaders. And that, I think, is the intention of the United States, notwithstanding what President Trump says about running Venezuela and all these other things. The intention here was to move Venezuela from destruction into some sort of a future for the people of Venezuela. And maybe some of those 7, 8 million people can actually come home. I mean, so I think this, on balance, resides in the law, in the courts, but also in morality. You can't lead a country and be connected to a drug cartel and profess you have legal rights and moral rights not to be prosecuted. Well, how does that go? Not in this world. And quoting the UN Charter doesn't get you anywhere, because what was Maduro doing in the UN Charter? He's a dictator in his country. He's a violator of the UN Charter and of the ideas of Bolivar. I mean, this is a great country, a Bolivarian country. And look who's running it, even the group that's there now. These people, I guarantee, are going to move in the direction of working something out with the United States. I'm pretty sure that's where it's going to go, because the Cubans, the Russians, and the Chinese who are bolstering them, and the Hezbollah people who are there, they are going to disappear like rats in the woods. They're going to be gone. They're going to run away, and the whole structure is going to collapse. And hopefully, either Machado or Gonzalez will come in, and they'll have elections, they'll have a democracy, which the people of Venezuela are entitled to, and which they could never have had under this individual Maduro, or under this Rodriguez, and this group of criminals, I think, is what the United States is saying.
Okay,
now,
Mr.
maybe the United
Professor,
States is wrong.
thank you so much for your time.
The courts will decide. My pleasure.
We do appreciate your thoughts on this matter.
My pleasure. My pleasure.